All right, so back with 52 weeks of Swift, and I'm going to do a topic that I'm actually qualified to talk about, which is automatic reference counting, which is something I've actually done when Objective-C was around as the dominant language. I used a desktop. I actually had a commercial application that was using that exact paradigm. And so what I'm going to do next is play around with the official documentation for that. And so I'm going to grab Swift and open it up here and go to, let's see here. Let's get into Xcode. And let's do file, new, playground. And I'm going to play around with automated reference counting, which is right here. And arc. There we go. Okay, so the concept here is a kind of a cool concept. I'm going to share my screen. There we go, arc. So the idea with the automatic reference counting concept is that you get the benefits of, like memory management without having to do things yourself, which is kind of nice, actually. And so here's an example of how automatic reference counting starts. This is a class called person, and it has a constant property called name. So let's play around with this. Again, this is official docs. So here we go. So we've got, we have things in memory now, right? The name is being initialized. And if we run here, if we want to look at it, we can do this. We can look at 3 different people here. At nil. And now we can create a person instance and assign it to one of those variables. Let's go ahead and try this out. There we go. So Johnny Appleseed is being initialized. There we go. So the next thing that we can do is if you assign the same person instance to 2 more variables, 2 more strong references to that instance are established. So if we go ahead and now we assign reference 2 to reference 1, and then we assign reference 3 to reference 1, what happens here is that there are 3 strong references, and if you break 2 of these by assigning a nil, a single reference remains and the person isn't deallocated. So if we now kind of break those strong references, right, we have here nil. Arc doesn't deallocate the instance until the 3rd and final point. This is cool. I like their example here. This is neat. So basically, boom, there you go. It's deinitialized. So I like this. This is a great way to understand how the arc system works. So basically, when the memory is deinitialized, this is where the deinit method is called. And I like how what they did was they just make a very simple class that creates multiple references to that object. It assigns a value to it, and then it shows how it hangs on to it basically, but automatically deallocates it once all references are actually are removed. And we can see this is the initialized. So the concept here is that the arc is able to track the references automatically and deallocate that person instance when it's no longer needed, which is kind of a cool concept. And we can go ahead and do a little bit more here. So this again is, I think, probably sums up the entire thing. So there's in a nutshell, you don't have to manage memory. The ARC system manages it for you. I mean, it's that simple. So now the next thing though is that there's strong references between class instances. ARC is able to track a number of references when it's no longer needed. So it's possible to write code in which an instance of a class never gets to a point it has 0. This can happen if two instances hold a reference to each other. You can resolve it. This process is called resolving strong reference cycles between class instances. And this shows an example how they can be created by accident. Okay, let's try it out. Sounds interesting. So I'm gonna delete this code. So we got a person class here, and when we init, we create self.name. When we deinit, it's being de-initialized, and then under apartments, we actually have another class, which is let init. There we go. So every person instance has a name of a type string and an optional apartment property that's equally nil. The apartment property is optional because a person may not always have an apartment. There we go. And now if we make an instance here, yep, and then we go to, yep, here we go, this, and we make an instance of John, like that. We make an instance of apartments, like that. Here's how the strong references look after creating an instance. The John now is a reference to the person, and the unit 4 has a strong reference to the apartment. You can link the two instances together, so the person has an apartment and the apartment has a tenant here. So basically, you can get yourself kind of tangled into a way of hooking things together, and the references counts don't drop to 0. So if you then go to and you create a nil of both, the deinit yet is not being called, and the deinit is not being called. And so, how do you solve that? A weak reference is a reference that doesn't keep a strong hold on the instance and doesn't stop ARC from disposing. And so the example is identical with one difference. This time the apartment's property is declared as a weak reference. I see. So I guess the solution here is you make weak references to get around that problem here. And the strong references and the links between the two instances as created before, right? So we can do the same amount of code right here. But in this scenario, if we then set it to nil, you can see that the memory is deallocated. There we go. So I guess that's the moral of the takeaway, or the takeaway is that you have to be careful when you're dealing with ARC it's not completely magic and everything automatically happens for you. One of the things that you need to do is to be aware of the fact that if you are going to link things together, that the weak reference will be able to tackle that problem of two classes being highly tangled together and not being able to deallocate memory. So this is definitely an interesting subtlety to ARC that I'm interested in playing around with, and that's really all I wanted to cover for today. What I'll cover, I only have a couple more parts of the language reference, memory safety, access control, advanced operators. So maybe 3 more weeks, and then I'm going to dive into building building actually like demos and solutions with the rest of the stuff. So I'm definitely a little bit bored of all of the official documentation. I want to try to build solutions. Probably a lot of command line tools in particular, I think would be kind of fun to play around with. Maybe a little bit of GUI stuff, but 3 more weeks. So memory safety next week, and then I'll start building some stuff out.